Hello everyone, this is for Algebra 2. It's about the definitions of the 6 trig identities on the unit circle. So just making sure that the pen was working. Sometimes it freezes. So here goes. You guys have been doing SOHCAHTOA. And those, are just fine on when you have yourself a triangle. But what we're trying to do is adapt this definition to work when you're sitting on the unit circle, because that's really why we're learning the unit circle, why you have to memorize it. So say I'm standing on this angle here, and I ask you to find the sine of that angle. You're going to take the opposite side here over this hypotenuse. Well, let's say you're sitting at 30 degrees. It has a coordinate. The coordinate is square root of 3 over 2, 1/2. Those numbers correspond to this height. This distance above the x-axis there is your y value. And this distance here is your x value. So they correspond to this side's 1/2 and this side's square root of 3 over 2. Well, what is this side? That's your hypotenuse. And how long is it? Well, it's 1, because otherwise it would be called the unit circle. Okay? Because the radius is worth 1. Remember that it's centered at 0, 0, and your radius is 1, so it's a circle, radius 1, on the regular XY grid. So, what does that have to do with the SOHCAHTOA? Well, one of the definitions you've had is sine of theta is your opposite over hypotenuse. Well, look at it here. Sine opposite over your hypotenuse is going to be 1/2 over 1, which is just 1/2. Okay, let's try cosine. Cosine of theta. That's your adjacent over your hypotenuse. So that's square root of 3 over 2 over 1. You can start to get the idea? Over 1. So do I really need to list it over 1? No, you don't. Okay, we'll hold off on tangent for just a second. So if I wanted the sine of that's 120 degrees. If I wanted the sine of 120, that coordinate is negative 1/2, positive square root of 3 over 2. What I want you to start to see is sine is your y value. Cosine is your x value. So when you're on the basic definition, let me back up. The basic definition of sine is opposite over a hypotenuse. If you're on the unit circle, it's your y value. Cosine is adjacent over a hypotenuse, which is your x value. So if out of the blue I ask you, give me the sine of 120 degrees, you go, oh, what is my y value at 120? The answer, square root of 3 over 2. If I ask you what the cosine of 120 is, you'd say it's my x value at 120, so negative 1/2. If I asked you what the sine of 225 degrees is, well, 225, you know the coordinate is negative square root of 2 over 2, negative square root of 2 over 2. So you'd say negative square root of 2 over 2, because that's your y value at 225 degrees. If I asked you over here at 330, that's square root of 3 over 2. Oops, negative 1/2. If I asked you the sine of 330, whoops, there's at the 0, 330 degrees, you'd say it's negative 1/2. Sine on the unit circle is your y value, cosine is your x value. Okay, so let's clear this out, and then let's look at tangent. If I draw that same triangle back, this side's 1/2, this side's square root of 3 over 2, because we're looking at 30 degrees. Tangent of an angle is your opposite over your adjacent. Your opposite side is your y value, and your adjacent side is your x value. So it's 1/2 over square root of 3 over 2. So that's 1/2 being divided by square root of 3 over 2. So that's 1/2 times the reciprocal of the bottom. You notice that cancels out, and you get 1 over the square root of 3. Then you have to rationalize it, and you get square root of 3, square root of 3. So you get square root of 3 over 3. That's the tangent of 30 degrees. Okay? Well, how about tangent of 135? The coordinate at 135 is negative square root of 2 over 2. That's a 2. Square root of 2 over 2. Tangent on the unit circle is your y over your x. So your y value, square root of 2 over 2, negative square root of 2 over 2. Okay, ignore the negative for a second. Isn't the top the same as the bottom? So it's worth 1, but you had a negative involved, so it's negative 1. It's that easy. Okay, let's try 120 degrees. That coordinate again was negative a half, positive square root of 3 over 2. If you want the tangent, oops, I should have put in there 135, sorry about that. This is 120. It's your y over your x. Your y value is square root of 3 over 2 over negative a half. You're dividing by negative a half, so multiply by its reciprocal. So the tangent of 120 is equal to negative square root of 3. All right? So when you guys go to do, wait a second now, let me do 2 more specifically for tangent. Okay, let's go 180. Tangent of 180. That coordinate is negative 1, 0. Tangent of 180 is y over x. So your y value is 0, your x is negative 1. I do not want you guys leaving your answer like this. You guys need to tell me, is that worth 0 or is it undefined? Well, it's not undefined because you're not dividing by 0, so that's worth 0. Now let's look at this one. That coordinate is 0, negative 1. Tangent of 270 is equal to your y value over 0, which is undefined. Okay? Now, what I haven't done with you guys here, and let me erase this right side, are the 6 trig functions with it. I just did sine, cosine, and tangent. Okay, so let's get some of those other identities going with it. Let's look at this one. If I have tangent, here we go. If tangent of 120 is equal to negative square root of 3, then, whoops, the cotangent of 120, remember, tangent and cotangent are just reciprocals. Then you have to rationalize it. So the cotangent of 120 is going to be equal to negative square root of 3 over 3. All right, let's try this one. The tangent, ooh, here, this is a better one. Right here, this is supposed to be 135. Some kids who really have troubles with this one. Okay, if the tangent of 135 is equal to negative 1, what is the cotangent of 135? Okay, this is why I was laughing about it. Because some kids have trouble taking the reciprocal of 1 or negative 1. If you take the reciprocal of that, don't you still get negative 1? Yep, you do. Okay, now look at this. The tangent of 180 is worth 0. Take the reciprocal of 0. It's undefined because you're going to have a 0 on the bottom. What's the reciprocal of undefined? 0. Okay, keep an eye open for that. Now let's clear this and go back to some of the other ones. Let's say one of the ones we started with, the sine of theta. Oops, sine of 30 degrees was one of the first ones we did. It's the y value here, so that would be a half. So what is the cosecant of 30 degrees? It's 2. Okay, what is the cosine of 30 degrees? That was the x value at that coordinate, which is square root of 3 over 2. So what is the secant of 30 degrees? It's the reciprocal, 2 over the square root of 3. You got to rationalize it. So it's 2 square roots of 3 over 3. Okay. So what you guys' homework is you define the 6 trig functions on the unit circle starting at 0. For example, this is your y value, this is your x value, this is your y over your x. So what's your y value at 0? 0. What's the reciprocal of 0? Undefined. What's your x value at 0? It's 1, because the coordinate here, maybe if I did that, I wrote the coordinate up there. Secant, there's the reciprocal of cosine. What's the reciprocal of 1? 1. What's your y value over your x value? 0 over 1, which is worth 0. Cotangent's the reciprocal of that, so it's undefined. Okay, let's jump out here to, I don't know, 210 degrees. If you want, write the coordinate at 210. 210, now if you see it, it's right down there. So that's going to be negative square root of 3 over 2, negative a half. Sine is your y value. Your y value is negative a half. The reciprocal of that is negative 2, and so on. Okay, so you're going to fill this whole thing out using the coordinates you know off the unit circle and the definitions of the 6 trig functions on the unit circle.